Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, and this man right here, Andrew Dicecco, InsideTheBirds.com. You're going to want to follow him on Twitter, at @DiceccoNFL. If you want to get any insight on the offseason and NFL draft, this is the man you need to follow. You get him twice a week for Football at 4, including right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I know Christmas was a couple of weeks ago. We're not asking for an Eagles loss, Andrew Dicecco, but this is kind of like getting into the holiday season for us, right? We get a little draft conversation, and this is right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, you got to pace yourself because we still haven't gotten through the playoffs and obviously the NFL Combine and the All-Star game. So still a long ways to go. But, yeah, I do enjoy this part of the offseason quite a bit.
Here's the man with perspective. Damn it. All right, here we go. All right, so a couple things to discuss based on yesterday, Roseman and Ciriani press conference. Obviously, both of them, Andrew, came out pretty strong and said Jalen Hurts will be back next year. Is there any reason in your mind to read the tea leaves any differently or doubt what both Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman said yesterday? They both pretty much said pretty strongly that Hurts will be back.
They said that pretty definitively, that Hurts is going to be back, and they even expanded on that more than they probably even had to. So, I mean, I think barring something unforeseen, listen, if a quarterback like a Russell Wilson is available for a respectable compensation, or even a Deshaun Watson, given his situation, if everything's all good on his end and it's attainable, I think it would behoove the Eagles to go in that direction. I think if they would go in that direction, but I mean, I think that they're comfortable going into next season with Jalen Hurts. All that said. And I think that, you heard Howie say that he wanted to see Jalen take the bull by the horns. He said that he thought that he did that. And, obviously Jalen has a lot to work on, and they're going to, iron that out as far as the offseason plans and what they expect from him. But I think that they are comfortable with him as the quarterback going into next season, if nothing, barring something unforeseen.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the questions that was asked was about what he needs to do in the offseason. And Sirianni went on this, whole explanation about repetition, but feet, and finish. That the message clearly is that he needs to become a more accurate passer. I think I saw a stat today that him in the pocket, his rating in the pocket last year and this year were essentially the same. In other words, he did not get much better as a pocket passer this year. He might have gotten better in other areas. So where do you agree with Sirianni that his footwork is where he really needs to get better to become a better passer, or if there's something else that he really needs to work on this offseason?
Yeah, mechanically, he's still flawed in that area, I would say. So there's definitely obviously merit to that as far as footwork. But I would also say just being able to read defenses and not predetermine your throws, just being able to have the experience and the nuance to go through your reads and be patient and scan the field and deliver the football with timing and be a little bit quicker in pulling the trigger. I think he was late on a lot of throws this year. But those are areas, Mike, with all that said, that I do think that he can correct. And he knows what the issues are. The coaches know what the issues are. Now it'll be interesting to see if he's able to, correct those flaws. And he has another year with his quarterbacks coach and Brian Johnson, who he knows very well. So if he can't get it done this offseason, in all likelihood is probably not going to. That's going to be what he is. That's the product of who he is as a pro. But I think that it's clear in what he needs to work on. Now let's see if he's able to take those steps and become more refined in those areas.
Yep. Obviously, I want to get your opinion. You mentioned Brian Johnson. That's a comfortable guy for him. But he was in Alabama, then Oklahoma, then Doug Peterson, and then obviously Nick Sirianni. How much is being in that same offense for a second year, do you think, going to help him develop as a quarterback?
I think it helps any player immensely when you have some sort of stability, because then it becomes And I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday when they asked me what does that continuity and rapport do, having that coaching staff in place for, consecutive seasons. And I said, well, I mean, think of yourself as a young player, and you're like, well, this coach told me to work on this, and then this coach told me to be mindful of that, and that goes against what the first coach was telling me. And all of a sudden you have all these different things, and you're trying to execute all these different things and keep these things in mind, and you're not really accomplishing anything. You're sort of in flux, and you're scatterbrained a little bit. So I think having the same coaches in place that are telling you to work on these areas of your game, you're not swimming as much, and you know what exactly you need to do in order to take the next step in your progression. So I think that there's something to be said for that. And, the adding support around him offensively, of course, is another facet to getting him to where the Eagles want him to be. So I think that they're going to have to bolster a lot of areas, particularly the wide receiving core, adding probably 2 wide receivers to that core. And that's all going to be part of the stew in getting him to where they need him to be. But most of it starts with Jalen and taking and refining those areas of his game that really have been troublesome, frankly, over the year and some change in which he's been a starter.
So you led us down the road to wide receiver. Sirianni, I counted this, 807 words yesterday he used to describe his wide receiving core. And he spoke glowingly about his wide receivers. He said he has a definitive number one. I don't think that's the word he used, but it was, he was being very clear that he thinks Devontae Smith is a number one wide receiver in this league. Would you concur at this stage that he is going to be a number one wide receiver in this league?
Right now, I would say yes, he is, because if you look at, it's easy to look at, well, he didn't make an impact in the first half of that Tampa Bay game, or he was invisible in certain spurts of the game. In all those instances, you can make a case that he's been open and gotten open against top-tier corners in this league. And even with a erratic passing attack, the numbers that he was able to put up is indicative of a player who has wide receiver one ceiling, upside, and that's going to be his long-term spot. I think that he's proven that he can do that. He wins from all 3 areas of the field. He's an advanced route runner. He runs routes very technical, like a veteran would. So, and as far as the other receivers, I don't really know what anybody would expect him to say when he's sitting up there, because as of right now, Jalen Reagor, he's coaching at that. He's his coach. He's Quez Watkins' coach. So, Greg Ward's still under contract. These are all players that are he's still presiding over. So I don't think that you're really going to see him say, we were really disappointed in this player. We thought he would be further along in his development, or, point out certain flaws in, certain players' games. But I think that he knows, and I think that the coaching staff knows, and Howie and everyone involved knows that they need to revamp that position in order for the offense to take the next step. You look at any of the teams playing this coming weekend, and they all have players that strike fear into opposing defenses. And the Eagles really, outside of a couple players, don't have that. And they need to figure out how they can make themselves more of a formidable offensive team, because we all know they want to be that pass-happy team, but they don't have the pieces in place in order to do so.
Right. Now, I agree with what you just said, Andrew, in terms of he's not going to come out and say, hey, Reagor stunk this year and he's, unsalvageable. But I was surprised, get your opinion, that he essentially said Watkins was the number 2 guy, and that he said, I think out of all the number 2 wideouts I've been around in the NFL, he can become one of the best number 2s that I've been around because he has the skill set and the ability to make plays. Number one, I don't know that they've ever really said Watkins was their number 2 guy. I think we all just assumed that he was kind of the 3rd guy. Not only did he say Watkins was ahead of Reagor, he said he could be the best number 2 guy in the league.
Well, I disagree with that. And as of right now, he is their number 2. So that's what I would expect a head coach to say as a vote of confidence for his player. But Quez Watkins, you look at the snap counts week in and week out and his involvement in the offense, it was very clear that he was the number 2, whether or not someone came out and said it or not. It was plain as day that he was. Now, I think that, you're going to look at the actions and see if they follow what he said, because I still envision them being an active in free agency, looking to acquire a veteran, and I do think that they're going to be getting a young receiver in the draft. So if that happens, if that comes to fruition right there, well, then you have to take what they say, and you have to do it anyway. Take what they say on the post, as the season wrap-up conversation with a grain of salt, because what they do in the coming months here is going to reveal more than what they said, yesterday.
Right. Now, with Reagor, they said he's their number 3 guy, and he said it's a two-way street, really. He put some of it on the coaches. He says, I'm not saying by any means that I'm taking all the blame or all the credit. I do agree with Ciriani to some extent that Reagor is a two-way street, that I don't think they used him well. That said, is he salvageable in your mind? Did they not use him well enough? Could they use him better? Or is he just unsalvageable at this stage?
Well, the thing with Jalen Reagor is this year they tried to shoehorn him into the offense in a number of ways. And in all the ways that they've tried, he wasn't successful. Plays were yielding negative yards. There was a game where he finished with negative receiving yards. The Jets sweeps weren't effective. People knew when they were coming. The best he's looked was on that opening drive. I believe it was against the Lions. But that was the Lions. They tried to use him that way throughout the season, and it just did not yield positive results. I think that Jalen Reagor is going to be, he's going to be obviously afforded another opportunity. He's a young player with a first-round pedigree, but I don't know that it's going to click for him here in Philadelphia. I think that he needs a fresh start elsewhere. I'm not crazy about his body language, like I said earlier in the week, and I think that he has, just gives off, bad vibes when things aren't necessarily going his way. And I think that when you see that, it's just a lot of frustration mounting. And I think that turning the page on him, getting him on another team, maybe another team can get some of those athletic traits and explosiveness out of him and utilize him a little bit more effectively. And without having that pressure of being under the microscope of the Philadelphia, in Philadelphia, you can't hide, and there's a lot of pressure that mounts. So I think maybe going elsewhere might serve him better.
Nick, you look at Nick Sirianni. Actually, I should say Howie Roseman. He was asked about, you have 3 first-round picks. You haven't drafted a linebacker in 40 years. Roseman said, I think we have a philosophy on how to build this team, a philosophy that we think has been successful. Obviously, you like to win more championships every time you're out there, but we're going to stay committed to the way we think of building the team. Translation to you is no linebacker, no safety, right?
If you're taking what he's saying at face value, then yes. But I think that, you also have a general manager that's not going to out himself on the podium and say, hey, my decision-making has been questionable. I have to revamp my philosophy. I think that they know. I think that it's very evident, and who knows? Even Jonathan Gannon may have said these are the players that I need to, that we need to sort of value in order for me to run my defense effectively. And I think you really saw the vast contrast in talent on these playoff teams versus what the Eagles currently have. And Howie Roseman is a smart guy. You hope that he's not, he's taking notes of what other teams have and why they're able to, proceed in the playoffs and what the Eagles don't have. And they just don't have the talent level to stack up. And they're very deficient in several areas that you can argue are the worst at their, in football. I think the Eagles have, by and large, the worst linebacking core in football. I think the Eagles have 2 safeties that would Anthony Harris would probably be a special teamer on a lot of teams, or a third safety. So I think that you need to look at that and say, how can we get this better and infuse this position with talent? Well, you're going to have to use a little bit more substantial draft capital in order to, refine those areas and really rebuild it to adapt to the modern NFL.
Yeah, because, and this is where, your draft background and, talking draft comes into play big time here is you're at 15, 16, and 19. Those are areas where, because people, hey, you got to be, just don't make the playoffs, be terrible. The areas that they need, linebacker, safety, seem more conducive to be picking in the middle of the draft than higher up in the draft, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be in that prime spot to get a guy like a Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah, who's probably, in my opinion, the best all-around linebacker in this draft.
Do you like him more
really
than Dean?
Adapted. Well, I like Dean as well. Dean's really good as a pass rusher, but he's a little bit undersized, right? He's 6 foot, 225. But I like, as an overall prospect, as an overall player, and someone that you can deploy to cover the Rob Gronkowskis and the Travis Kelce's and all these different, sort of dynamic playmakers. I like Devin Lloyd in that regard. I mean, you can't go wrong on either one. I also think they should double dip. I think you might want to look at adding a guy like a Channing Tindall, who's probably the fastest linebacker overall in this draft. You imagine him and Davion Taylor on the field and flying down there on special teams. But you can't help but you have to add athleticism and talent to this defense. I think you need to really look at that second level and figure out a way to retool that and really get up to speed with the way the NFL is trending. So, yeah, they are in a sweet spot to get a couple of those guys. Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, is another player that they need to really consider taking in either of those spots.
Yeah, and I had read something that said, hey, look, if this is the year you wanted a quarterback or a truly high-end prospect, this wasn't the year. But there's a lot of mid-first-round players that are all over this draft. So to have 3 in the middle, this was kind of the right year to be in the middle, and it seems that they can kind of really make a splash there because the one thing is, though, they do need an edge rusher, right? They do need a defensive tackle, and they probably need an offensive lineman because the Kelce thing is going to be looming whether he plays or not. So those are the 3 positions that Howie likes to draft, and they do kind of need those 3 spots.
They're going to need a lot. If you look at the pending free agents, there's a lot of players that they could be. I mean, both safeties could be on their way out. Obviously, Marcus Epps, you could probably plug him in as a Band-Aid to get you through a season. I think he could give you the same, if not better, performance than an Anthony Harris. I mean, they have a lot of deficiencies, which is exactly why it doesn't make sense to unload these you're in prime spot to really get this roster up to speed and really add these building blocks. That's why it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to sort of give these away for quarterbacks who are aging when you don't have a roster equipped to make a deep run, regardless of who your quarterback is, without addressing the defensive side of the ball. So you are in a prime spot to really retool that area, and I think that it behooves the Eagles to do so.
All right, Andrew Dicecco, I want to get some divisional thoughts. Bengals, Titans. The Cincinnati team, I didn't like them all year long, but I got to give in now. I was wrong about them. You know what it is?
If you remember, I picked them to win the division when you asked me.
I was going to say, I got to give you credit because you like them. And my big problem with them was they didn't take a lineman in the draft. They took Chase. Now, Chase was so good. Who thought he was going to be this good? And now they're this good, and now they can start to focus on their line. The problem is this weekend, I think the line problems might catch up to them.
Could be, but I do think that aerial attack versus that Titans secondary is going to be a difference maker. I mean, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase is arguably the best young duo of wide receivers in football. Probably, I don't think that that's even a question. And, I mean, going against the Titans, which were vulnerable in that area, Joe Burrow's playing at a high level. I like the young pieces they have on defense. They're a fast-flowing unit. Jesse Bates is one of my favorite safeties in football. He's a ball hawk. I mean, they're pretty sound on both sides of the ball and on special teams. So I think that momentum's in their favor. Remember, we didn't see the Titans play. You'll be interested to see if they get off to a rusty start. They can't afford to do so against the Bengals, who are red hot right now. So I like Cincinnati in this matchup.
All right, you got who's your receiver, Chase or Jefferson? Who would you take?
Jamar Chase, because he's sort of that Deebo Samuel, stocky, do-it-all type of player. And I think that he just has all-pro ability and just the dynamic traits that you look for in that top receiver. I mean, either one, you gotta love from what they're able to do. But I think if you're looking at overall explosiveness and game-changing ability, I'm looking at Jamar Chase.
All right, Niners, Packers, Deebo. I know you're a Deebo guy, so do they have enough ways to get him the ball? Because this is a leaky defense. So that's my story in this game: is can the Niners get Deebo enough touches against this defense?
I think that they can, and I think that they're going to have to if they want to hang with the Packers. That said, I love the pass rush for the 49ers. And when you have a good pass rush and you have a sound running game and they have a do-it-all receiver in Deebo Samuel, I think that's a good recipe to take out a team like Green Bay. And, I mean, the 49ers are, like, again, that's another team that has momentum going into this weekend. And that's a sneaky team that I think could make some noise here if they advance. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Andrew Dicecco, Football 4, divisional games. That was Saturday. Sunday, Rams, Bucks. This is it for the Rams, man. They've got to win this year. This is it. They've given up. They've sold their soul to the devil in this one. But the devil sometimes wears Tampa Bay colors, that Tom Brady. Do the Rams have enough to take out Brady?
It's hard to bet against Tom Brady. He's able to dissect pretty much any defense that you put out in front of him. However, I think he's going to meet his match this week against the Rams defense, particularly Aaron Donald. I think that he's going to collapse the pocket. I think he's going to cause Brady to rush some of his throws and really hurry his progressions. And I think you're going to see some of these hits take a toll on Tom Brady. And I think ultimately Matt Stafford's going to put together enough offensively to put them ahead. And Cam Akers, how about Cam Akers coming back from that Achilles injury, providing yet another boost to that offense? And I think he's also going to be a difference maker this week. I like the Rams.
All right, and the last one I think might be the most fun of the weekend. I've been saying all week, Andrew, this is like the younger generation's Brady Manning. It's Allen Mahomes. Like, we might see these guys, meet 6 out of 10 years. Man, Kansas City had a rough start to the year, and they never quite felt like the Chiefs really till last week. The Bills looked like a Super Bowl contender, and then they fell apart. Now they're really hot, and I think this one's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't long ago that the Bills lost, 9-6 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
Jeez.
It's just been one of those seasons, man. And, looking at this game, I think it is going to be the most fun matchup of the weekend. But, again, I give the edge to the team with the better defense, and that's Buffalo. They have enough offensively to hang with the Chiefs. The Chiefs don't have enough defensively to stop Buffalo. And I think that the Buffalo defense is strong enough to stop Pat Mahomes and company, get at least one more stop in the Chiefs. So I think that's going to be the difference maker. I like Buffalo to move on.
Ooh, yeah. I Andrew Dicecco at Dicecco NFL. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Is Senior Bowl this weekend?
No, I think it's next week.
Next weekend. All right, because I know we'll be keeping an eye on that. Got a couple local guys in there as well, plus a couple guys to keep an eye on for Eagles fans. We'll talk about that with Andrew next week here on Football at 4. Andrew, thanks, man.
You got it. Talk to you soon.